welcome to Friends and Neighbors, and I'm sure all of you know my name by now, don't you? Sandra, you know my name, don't you?
Sherry Tatum.
Exactly.
Fabulous Sherry Tatum.
Yes, and you know what? I'm going to say your name, Sandra. Oh, no.
Sandra.
I know they know it, but we're going to say it anyway. Hey, we're just glad you're here with us here at Friends and Neighbors, and we hope you're settled back and drinking a hot cup of green tea.
I know. Tea has been my jam lately.
Me too.
It's been great.
Green tea.
Yes.
Green tea. But we're going to jump right into this program because we've got Dr. Hugh Johnson with us, who is with World Christian Ministries, and it is in Haiti. Right, Mr. Johnson?
Correct. Good morning.
We'll say Dr. Johnson.
Dr. Johnson.
Dr. Johnson.
That's right.
It's you. Now,
Thank you.
tell me, you go to Haiti, right?
That's correct.
You do all your work there. Tell me, because when I knew you 30-something years ago, you were not in Haiti, but you were.
No.
So how did that get started?
It was the work of the Lord that planted it and started it. He does things sometimes over a long stretch in our lives.
Amen.
And we might not see it for a great long period of time.
Right.
Because almost 40 years ago, in fact, it was more than 40 years ago, a friend of mine was going to go to Haiti with a mission trip. He had put together a mission trip. He had 12 men to go down and build a church building, to work on the church building for a week. And he was going to be down there as the pastor, sort of, on the trip. And he came to realize how desperate it is to go and be in Haiti, because there's mosquitoes, there's several types of disease, malaria, there's cholera, there's lockjaw. And so he didn't want to go. He sort of chickened out. And then he tricked me into going. And he told me, it's the greatest experience of a man's life.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll go. That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
So here I go down to Haiti. And well, I'm so glad I went, but at the moment I wasn't, because it was another world. It was like culture shock.
Right.
And so a lot of mosquito bites. I cooked that week for the men and did some of the physical work too. But God sort of used that to open my mind that, hey, here's this whole world that needs Jesus. And even though these people do not speak your language, they don't understand you, they do understand love. That's the language that will penetrate any language barrier.
Right.
Is the language of love. And they could feel the love.
I love that, and I love that you
Amen.
Pointed love is the key, and we as Christians, we really need to apply that love to the people around us, even when it's so hard. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you that were just really I love that you are evangelical based. I mean, that is just, that's the promise. That's what God asked us to
Amen.
do. But what would you identify as the greatest area in need in evangelism today?
I think it's twofold. Mm-hmm. And I think the first one, the greatest area, is in the hearts of Christians.
Mm-hmm. I'll agree.
I agree 100%.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
And what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Well, we're so comfortable at going into our churches, mm-hmm. and we sit down and we hear the best music in the world. We hear, like you can sing so fabulously.
Thank you.
And we listen to that beautiful music, and we're moved and we're soothed and in our feelings, and we're comfortable, and we know we're going to eat well afterward, and we see our friends, and then we leave there and we go away. But our hearts are not awakened to God's eyes looking down on the earth, mm-hmm. where He sees the pain. He sees the hurt that's even here around us, that's in our cities, in our homes. He sees that pain.
Yes.
And we're seeing our comfort in encouraging our feelings and soothing our feelings. So I think it's got to start in the heart of Christians here.
Yes.
So that we become aware of and awake to, mm-hmm. so that that compassion begins in us.
Yes, yes.
Before we see the world.
But Hugh, don't you think that goes back to having love? Because the Bible says, you know, you can give your body to be burned, but if you don't have love, you're as a tinkling brass and a sounding cymbal. Because I know Haiti is very poverty-stricken. Yeah. I know that children go hungry. I know there's so many orphanages in Haiti, and I was talking about love. You know, if we could just get past our comfort and see the hurt of others, maybe we could help in some way, like you have helped. But now you do go there and help in the orphanages, right?
Right. Well, I started this particular orphanage, and we started out with 13 kids, basically. We had about 11 kids, and we had 2 extremely old people, and we had a mentally challenged adult, and a blind man as well. And unfortunately, our blind man, in the big hurricane that went through about 4 years ago or so.
Was that Matthew? What?
I'm not sure the name of the hurricane. I just remember he was in a little block building, and the wall collapsed and he died. So we lost our blind man.
Oh, how sad.
But, yeah.
But you see that a lot, though, don't you, there in Haiti?
Oh, yeah.
So many children starving, so many adults that have no work. There's not any work there. But people say, well, we send money over there all the time. Why aren't there jobs? Why are these kids hungry? So give me a little bit of insight on that, because I know Americans send a lot of money. Our government sends money.
A lot of what we send is just vacuumed up into the system itself. A lot of ministries, and I don't mean to speak, I will not speak ill of any ministry, but there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and there's a lot of hype, and there's a lot of pictures, and there's a lot of trying to grab your sympathy. But what they're doing is filling their pockets up, and then they're nominally dealing with the people. But the massive money that we send, it's the corruption of the government that siphons that money up, and they never allow it to get out into the people.
So what do you do actually when you go there? Or you have a gentleman that works there continuously, right?
Yes.
That
the way I
correspond
know,
with.
Yes. The way I know that what I'm doing goes directly into the people is that Pastor Jen Duperville, who was born there, grew up there until he was 19, came here, started a business, became an American citizen. Then the earthquake happened. He went back down, and that's how the ministry actually got started, because he called me from Haiti, and he said, he had been meeting in my church. I gave him my church as a place to meet, a Haitian congregation here. He called me, he said, I've got children on the street that are 4 and 5 years old, no parents. Their parents are dead. And he said, they're sleeping on the ground and begging people for food in the daytime. He said, what do I do? I said, put them in a house. And he said, well, we don't have any food. I said, I'll send money for food. And so that's how we got started. So the reason I know that every dime that I send goes directly to the people is because he's there. And I know him well. I knew him for 16 years. I worked with him. I was around him all the time. And I go down and check and make sure all these things are done. But it goes directly into the mouth of the child. No money comes to me. No money goes to him. Wonderful. He works for nothing, only for the food he eats.
Yes.
That's about it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, and that just speaks into the integrity and into the honesty and what we as Christians stand for, which is God's love and doing things honestly. And I think in our culture right now, there's so many people that do things because they want to be looked at as I am doing good, and they just are not following through with where that good is going.
Right.
So that's really neat. And I think with the evangelical point that I was trying to make earlier is the fact that if we can't feed our hearts privately with God's word, how can we pour it out to others? You know, God's not going to honor that, right?
Yeah, that's when I was speaking initially about where do we start with world evangelism, you just said it again. You just reiterated that it has to start in here. Yeah. This is where this has to happen, is that the love of Jesus has to become us.
And I think as Christians in America, just in America per se, we have taken that so much for granted, and we're saying, okay, we're going to go and feed people out in other countries, in Haiti, for example, which they need it. I'm from Peru. There are third world countries out there that need it.
That's
but
true.
you know what? God is not going to honor the seed that we're sowing if we are not when we are at home here, not really applying our Christian life and just going there to say, I'm going there so I can tell people that I'm a good person. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
An example, I think we have to be examples.
Yes.
We have to be Jesus, with hands and feet.
And we actually have to follow through with that.
I think that's the biggest compliment you can have if someone says, I see Jesus in you, or I want what you have, which is Jesus. But now, Hugh, what do you think that not having enough love or enough caring is one of the primary problems in the third world missionary work? Do you think that's a big problem?
Well, for the funding here and for the involvement of people here, I think the normal person should be involved in evangelism all the time.
Yes.
It's not just a professional person who goes out and says, I am an evangelist. I am a missionary.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's us.
It starts with us.
We have to love.
Yeah.
You can love somebody.
Yes.
And so when we go down, we try to take some people, and my main thing is to love people there so that I can involve them and then let them do building and construction and teaching and involve them that way.
Okay, we've got about, a minute and a half. Before a break, where do you get the funding? Do you meet with other groups of people? How would one help you if you needed help to send money?
Primarily, the funding for everything that's happened so far, I have provided the funding, and personally. But I have some people who help me. I have one individual who contributes to me every month, and that money goes directly to Haiti. And then I've had my church, New Providence Baptist, has also helped as well. And through it, we've been able to do the work we've been able to do down there so far.
Well, do you get volunteers sometimes through your church to go and help, or is that in the equation?
I don't use as many people. I plan to use some people to take people down so that they can work, we can build a structure, and also to minister to the people. But by and large, I have to use the people down there because Haiti is such a difficult and rough place. I don't like to take.
Okay, well, hold that thought. We're going to come right back. More with Dr. Hugh Johnson and here on Friends and Neighbors. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to Friends and Neighbors. And Sandra, I know that you're just dying to ask Hugh about the miracle.
I do. I want to hear about the miracle of the lug wrench in Haiti when you were there.
Yes, the tire tool. When you're in Haiti, a lot of times you don't have everything that you want just right there on the street. You don't have a tire shop here. You don't have. You can't call a car service to come out. But anyway, when Pastor Jen was coming to pick me up at the airport, he was driving an old car with very thin tires, and someone had stolen the grid out of the street that covers the sewer.
Yes.
So it created a hole about this long in this square that was concrete all the way around, sharp edges, and bam, bam, in the rain, he hit those and burst both tires completely on the car. So he booted the tire because there was no place to buy tires, and he didn't have any money either.
Right.
So he booted it, which means he got an inner tube put inside it and a piece of tire, and then put the tire back on the car. So when he picked me up at the airport in Port-au-Prince, we're driving through Port-au-Prince, and the diesel smoke is thick in the air. It looks almost like it looks like a war zone. And it's 97 degrees. I'm sweating. There's no air conditioning in the car. I'm looking at this. They're burning plastic bottles, piles of plastic bottles this deep in the street. And you're just driving and driving and get me out of this town, please. And so suddenly, as we're driving along, we hear, psh, we've got a flat tire. So he's a mechanic. He came here, formed his own garage, and he's an excellent mechanic. So he got out to fix the tire. When he gets out, no lug wrench.
Oh, no.
No tire tool to take the lugs off of the tire.
Wow.
Not one. So I'm standing there looking at that, and I'm looking at Haiti and thinking, this is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, it was boiling down. I was standing on the sidewalk in the sun, and I just asked God, I said, what are you going to do
About this.
to take care of this situation? It was kind of a silly thing for me to do in my mind. I didn't do that because there were people, looking. I didn't want to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
But
But anyway, so I was standing there really thinking that. And I said, well, what can we do? And he said, we will walk down the street, we will drive the car with the rim, we will go down, we will get the tire. And I said, oh man, we're going to ruin the tire, we're going to ruin the rim.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, God, how could how could this happen? I don't know. So I look down the street, and down the street, here comes a man with a wheelbarrow. Mm-hmm. And he's pushing a wheelbarrow, and on top of the wheelbarrow, he has a tire, a great big truck tire like this. That man's coming up the street toward us. And I thought, that's weird. And a man rolling a tire up the street, and Jen lets the car down, takes the jack out from under it, and the guy arrives with a tire and going up the street. And I said, could you ask him if he knows where we could get a tire? He's got one. He might know, a place. So he turns to the guy, asks the guy where he could maybe get a tire, and guess what the man had in the wheelbarrow under the tire?
The lug wrench.
A brand spanking new
tire.
lug wrench for tire
Look at me.
to take off the lugs on the car. I said, buy it. He bought it from the guy. $20 it cost me US. Over here I could have bought it for $7, but never mind.
Yeah.
I made a picture of that. I've got it on my desk. God's tire tool.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah, there it is.
And God had to do that. God knew
at that
thousands
moment,
of years ago,
yes,
that at that moment I would stand there, my tire would be flat, and he needed to send somebody with a tire tool, a brand new one, in a wheelbarrow coming up that street.
He's always with us. He always knows.
And he's so real too. And for people,
That's
there's
so
a generation
awesome.
out there that has no clue about our awesome
goodness.
God and His goodness and how real He is. Some people may say, "Oh, that was just pure luck. That was just one of those things." How would you respond to that?
The odds of that being pure luck are less than 1 in all the numbers that could ever be imagined if you live to be 1,000 years old.
Yeah, 10 to the 20th power.
And many times more.
And I think that's so.
Yeah,
and when it becomes real to that person, I think that's where we go back to evangelizing and knowing, God is love. He loved you so much that He saw you in that situation in a place that is completely different than what you're used to with all the accessibilities and accommodations that we have here. Yeah. And He said, here, I'm going to give you this.
Well, He says before the world was formed, you were in His mind.
Yes.
I was
all
there.
the things.
And if He does that for you, He can do that for you. It's not one of those things.
Everybody.
Yes.
But now, I go a lot of places in this world on mission trips. Mm-hmm. One place that I have said, Lord, please don't send me. I'm sorry, I don't mean to say
don't say it, because He will.
I know. It scares me a little bit about the voodoo in Haiti, and I want to ask you about
talk to us about
voodoo,
that.
and does it hinder your work in any way, and have you had any dealings with that, Hugh?
Yep, voodoo is very real. For someone to just dismiss it as a cultural thing is wrong, because Satan is real.
Right.
And voodoo itself is actually involved partially in the worship of evil spirits and evil things like that. It's very powerful, it's very controlling, and it's very real. Mm-hmm. And they do not like Christians.
Really?
They're anti-Christian greatly because their means of dealing with life is to instill fear in someone. To scare them.
Yes.
And through scaring them, they control them. But I've seen the power of God work, and I know at least in our ministry, there was one person saved that was a voodoo priest. And we had gone on an evangelism work where we go sleep on the ground. I send about 20, 40 people. They sleep on the ground. I feed them rice and beans for 2 or 3 days, and they get up every day, evangelize all day, and then have worship at night. And this guy's daughter, 13-year-old daughter, had come down to the worships, and then the priest said, "You can't go down there anymore. I don't want you to have anything to do with Christianity." So we went to the house and witnessed to him. And you would think he would have just beaten us over the head.
Or cast a spell on you.
Or thrown a spell on us.
Yeah. Get a doll out. And
Yes, that. But instead, Jesus Christ came upon him and cast a spell on him.
Hallelujah. Because
Praise
God
God.
is so
He got
much bigger.
saved, and that day took all of his voodoo paraphernalia, his altars, everything he had, put it in the front yard, put gasoline on it, and set it on
Hallelujah.
fire.
Oh,
Glory to God.
Awesome. Well, now listen. Say Sandra and I wanted to go down there. Would it be okay, safe? Should we go?
Let's do a friends and neighbors.
Yeah. Or should
Down there.
should we hear? I think I would have to hear the Lord say, "Sherry, go to Haiti."
Yes, yes. it would.
Because is it safe or no?
Not now. It's not the
No.
right place to be.
Okay.
No.
Now why?
It's just dangerous. Last year was a year of rioting. There were a lot of people harmed, hurt. I had one man that works with us that was killed. He was shot off of a motorcycle in Port-au-Prince.
Oh my word.
So it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. There are diseases spread by mosquitoes. There's no way to stop the mosquitoes. There's thousands and thousands of mosquitoes. You're going to get bitten by mosquitoes if you go. Also, the food is dangerous unless you thoroughly cook it. You have to boil your water or buy water. And it's just a very, very difficult place. So I wouldn't recommend that.
Okay.
The best way to work is to go in and to train people there who are there all the time, then use them to do the work. That's the safest way.
Because they speak Haitian Creole, right?
Correct.
And French. Is that right? Because my interpreter, when I went to Paris to minister to the Haitians in Paris, he spoke the Haitian Creole and he spoke French. And I was just amazed that they speak French, but that's because the French owned that one
that's
time,
right?
right?
It was a French colony
Yeah.
many, many, many years ago. But most of the people in the rural areas speak only Creole.
Do you speak it?
I speak only a little. Pagaye, which means I don't have any.
Oh, you don't have. Well,
That's what I say when someone's begging. Pagaye, I don't have any.
Okay, quickly.
But I speak a little French.
What are you trying to build, or have you had any success in building an economic infrastructure for the people there in Haiti?
Yes, that's been my...
Is that your purpose?
Yes, that's one of my primary purposes, because with no income and no jobs, there's nothing they can do. So I've started 13 businesses, and I have 26 full-time employees who get a full-time salary.
Are you training them
Yes.
for this? Is that why you're doing that?
Them. We're teaching them to be teachers. We're helping the pastors learn how to best pastor their churches. I've planted 7 churches. I've got 2 schools, 10 teachers. And then I have a woodworking shop. I have a motorbike shop where we work on motorbikes. We have a fish place where we sell fish, dried fish, and we've even got a net that we're trying to catch fish. We haven't caught any fish.
So you're not only bringing the gospel, but you're bringing a vocation, helping those people to have a vocation so they can have a job. But we've got to take another break, so we're going to go for one moment. So stay with us here. We're coming right back with Dr. Hugh Johnson, more about Haiti, and maybe we can help.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, welcome back. And Hugh, I wanted to ask you, because we got about a minute and so, what is a crusade like in Haiti? And do you put on a crusade, or are you part of it?
Very different than here. Our evangelism there, it consists of us getting the group together from one church, which might be up to 40 people, which I've sent 40, I've sent 80. We rent a banana truck. We load everybody on one truck. Yes,
I love
standing
it.
up. They ride 2 or 3 hours to another city, and then they sleep on the ground at night. I feed them rice and beans, and they'll stay 2 or 3 days. They go from morning till night, knocking on doors and witnessing to people and inviting them to worship that night. And at night we have the service and then invitations. And then by Saturday, people that have been saved, we have we feed everyone. Sometimes they feed 400 or 500 people, rice and beans again. And then we baptize. So it's the people doing the evangelism.
Yes.
It's not like putting up a stage and great music and a very eloquent speaker.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's being the hands and
People
feet.
just sharing what Jesus did for them, and that's the power.
That is the
Right.
power.
Because the Spirit of God in them is the power that penetrates.
Dr. Johnson,
the heart.
how can we support you? Real quickly, how can we support you?
Contributions to the church I pastor will all be designated to go straight to Haiti.
Yes.
I receive nothing from this. The church would designate it all to Haiti. That's New Providence Baptist Church in East Cobb. And their website is npbchurch.org.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good interview.
Thank you.
you.